Okay, now we want to talk about fragrance load and fragrances, and when we're measuring out our fragrances, what percentage do we need in the wax to make it really smell good? Because do we just take the bottle and just pour some into the wax and then hope it smells good? Like, no, that's not really the right way to do it, because we need to know that we're getting the right percentage for the wax, because if we add too much, we're gonna have fragrance overload and it'll just literally be mushy liquid on top, and it won't actually make the wax hard at all. And if we don't put enough, then we're not gonna have any smell. So we're either gonna get a mess or we're gonna get an inferior product. So this is why we need to use specific percentages in order to get the perfect product. Okay, and how you know which percentage of fragrance oil to use for your wax melts depends on the actual fragrance provider and the percentages that they provide. This will be a percentage that you find on the website. It will tell you, like, it will say something like candle usage 7 to 10% or 7 to 15% or something, whatever it is. Every brand that you buy from is different, and sometimes they have it on the bottle. Like if I look at this bottle right here, it'll tell you usage 6 to 10%. So can you see that there? Usage 6 to 10%. Now, if you want to make a really good product that really smells good, go to the max percentage that the fragrance says that it can hold. So I always use 10%. So 10% fragrance to the amount of wax that I'll use, and I'll show you how to do that calculation now. Okay, we've got our precision scale, and we've got our beaker here, a nice clean beaker, and some fragrance oils. So the supplier that I'm going to be using for this demonstration is Aussie Candle Supplies, although in my fragrance stash I have a lot of different other suppliers as well. I just have a pad of sticky notes here because I'm going to show you how to calculate a percentage of fragrance. So let's say that I'm going to use just a standard 10% fragrance load, right? FO, I always write as fragrance oil. Whenever you see FO right here, know that I'm talking about fragrance oil. Okay, so there's a couple of ways we can do this. We could literally just go 10 grams. Don't use mils. Don't do it, because you can't measure mils in these big jugs. Like, you can't figure that out. So we're not talking mils. Go the same ratio. If you're using grams for measuring out your wax, use grams for measuring out your fragrance oil. So let's do simple. 10 grams of fragrance oil to 100 grams of wax. Well, that's pretty simple. So you just would measure out 10 grams and then 100 grams into here, into your pot, right? And then you would think, okay, yeah, I can do that. Well, yes, you can. And we're going to do that. But there's also another way that we can do things. And that is when we have a little bottle like this and we don't know how much is left in it. We'll want to use the entire bottle up when we're doing one batch, because if I don't have this particular scent in a larger bottle or another bottle, then why would I want to just keep a tiny bit around? It's kind of like a waste, and it's just a waste of space and a waste of supplies. So let's now do a harder calculation of seeing how much fragrance oil is actually in this bottle and then using the correct amount of wax for it to make our product. So I got my scale. Let's turn it on. My beaker is on it. We don't want it off and then zeroed and then do that. That would get an inaccurate measurement. So make sure that you either push tare on your scale to make it go 0 before you even start. You really want to make sure that that you get the right calculation. So I'm going to open this little tiny bottle here, and I'm going to pour it in here to see how much is left in it. Okay, you can see that I've got like 11.4. You can see the numbers there, right? Okay, so if I was doing this, which I am going to knock this up to 12 grams. It's 11.5. You could get super technical, but it's not really that necessary to be. Okay, we're going to go 12 grams of fragrance oil, and then this would equal 120 grams of wax. But what about the universal additive, Jess, that you've been talking about? Okay, here's the deal with universal additive. On the website, it will say, or on the bag, usually it will say in between 1 to 3% usage, okay? But if you actually look at some of the websites, they will say if you use this at a 10%, it will create a tart that will just pop out of a mold. So if you have a mold like this, just for example, a mold like this, and you wanted to make your soy wax into a tart mold, you need to harden this up, right? So if you took the universal additive and you added it at 10%, you would actually get a harder wax that would pop right out of this once it's cooled down. Now, what do I do when I'm making my wax melts? I usually do a 10% load of, or a ratio of universal additive when I'm doing wax melts, regardless if I'm actually doing a tart or if I'm doing a container mold. And this works really good because it adds it adheres the fragrance to the wax, and it also creates that hardness and the stability of the actual product, which is what we're totally looking for when it comes to it, because we want it to look good at the end. We also want it to perform. Would that then mean that I would use 12 grams of additional universal additive, and then would it mess up my ratios of fragrance oil to wax? You could argue that. This is what I do. When I'm making this batch, I'm going to look at this. So I know that 12 grams is 10%. So what I would do is I would add 10 to 12 grams of UA, which is universal additive, which remember is palm stearic acid. So that's what I would do.